Customer. When a company has situations where product is supplied by a customer for use in the final product, ISO requires that the company must assure it has a system to identify, protect, handle, and store customer-owned product while it is in its possession. What system is needed for product identification and traceability? In the area of product identification and traceability, ISO requires procedures to identify product during all stages of production, delivery, and installation. When product traceability is required by contract, a company must be able to demonstrate it has the ability to identify and recall non-conforming product delivered to a customer. What controls are needed in manufacturing operations? In the area of manufacturing operations, ISO requires a company to describe how it assures it has the manufacturing capability in place to meet design and customer requirements. In addition, ISO requires all manufacturing operations to be carried out with clear work instructions that are appropriate for the complexity of work and the level of skill of the workforce. What is required at inspection and test? In the area of inspection and test, the quality system must demonstrate that appropriate receiving, work in process, and final inspections and tests have been performed on the product or service. The company will be asked to demonstrate how it assures all specified quality characteristics are met from initial receipt throughout the production process to final completion. What control of inspection and test equipment is required? In the area of inspection and test equipment, a company must demonstrate that it controls, calibrates, and properly maintains inspection and test equipment. In addition, a company must be able to demonstrate that inspection and test equipment has the necessary accuracy and repeatability to measure its product or service. What about the inspection status of product in the production process? In the area of inspection status, a company must be able to establish product status during all stages of the production cycle. You must be able to assess whether or not the product has been inspected and approved, or been inspected and rejected. In addition, you must be able to demonstrate evidence that all specified inspections have been performed. What controls are needed for non-conforming products? In the area of non-conforming products, all non-conforming products must be clearly identified, segregated, and controlled to prevent unauthorized use, shipment, or mixing with conforming products. What system is needed to assure that the cause of quality problems are corrected? In the area of corrective action, when problems occur, you must have a system to correct the cause of problems, both product and system-related problems, and prevent future occurrence of the problem. In addition, it is very important that the company demonstrate it has a system to resolve customer problems and complaints. What procedures are required to protect and preserve product during manufacturing and storage? In the area of product protection, procedures must describe how product is handled, protected, packaged, and preserved throughout all stages of the production process and in storage. What records are required? In the area of quality records, a company must define the quality records that are critical to the business. Typical quality records include management review reports, internal quality system audit reports, corrective action reports, design review reports, non-conforming material reports, and results of critical inspections and tests. Calibration records of test and inspection equipment, supplier assessment and measurement reports. And then moving on to another key question, how do you assure the quality system is being followed and is effective? To assure the quality system is being followed and is effective, internal audits must be planned and conducted. The objective of internal audits is to assure activities affecting quality are performed as documented and are effective. Corrective actions resulting from internal audits must be formally documented and responded to. In my experience, internal quality system audits, in conjunction with the management reviews we talked about earlier, are the keys to long-term ISO success. They should be designed to discover potential quality system problems, system improvement opportunities, and to verify that corrective actions are in place and are effective. Bottom line, internal quality system audits and management reviews of the results of the internal audits are key tools to assure your quality system is being followed and that your system is effective. What are the training requirements? In the area of training, a company must identify its training needs and demonstrate that it has a plan to implement the required training. Obviously, it is important that your training plan include training to all employees of the quality system procedures that affect their activity. And ISO requires that our training plan identify activities affecting quality that have special skills and capabilities. It is important to note that to comply with ISO 9000, it is not enough just to define your training needs. A company needs to assess its needed skills and capabilities, evaluate where they stand against the defined training needs, and decide how they are going to deliver the required training. Once training needs are defined, you must be prepared to demonstrate that you have a plan to implement the required training. What is needed in the area of servicing? In the area of servicing, a company must demonstrate it has procedures to plan, control, and verify the quality of the service. What statistical techniques are required? In the area of statistical techniques, ISO requires procedures to assure that appropriate statistical techniques are in use in the company to assure the proper design and manufacturing capability is in place, and that statistical techniques are used to control and prevent quality problems. This has been an overview of the 20 elements of ISO 9001. As you can see, these ISO 9001 elements cover a broad range of business activities, from management responsibility to contracts, design, manufacturing, and service. I believe the standard does a good job of presenting a group of common sense quality principles all companies conducting international business should follow. In the second half of our program, I will discuss an approach I have found successful in implementing the standard, and I will discuss typical benefits of ISO implementation.
We are now going to have the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. We are just asking you to please ask one question per call, and please be as brief as possible. You may call directly to the phone numbers or fax that are now appearing on your screen. First question is coming via fax, and it's coming from the beautiful city of Medellin, Colombia, and it comes from Fenalco. If a company is not conducting business internationally, is it still important to implement ISO 9000?
Yes, I believe any company working on developing a quality system or improving an existing quality system would be very, very smart to consider the ISO 9000 standard in its implementation activities, even if it is not conducting international business.
Second question is also coming from, it's coming from Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. It's coming from KTV Communications, and it's also coming via fax. What are the expectations, short-term and long-term expectations of implementation and utilization of the ISO 9000 in the United States?
Yes, the short-term expectations of most companies implementing ISO 9000 is to first document and better understand the quality system. Also, the initial short-term expectation usually uncovers weak links and things that need to be improved to bring the company's actions and systems up to the ISO standard. In the long term, the major benefit is that this becomes now a good, strong foundation to build a continuous improvement program on. As we all know, it's very, very difficult to improve a system if it is not understood and not documented. By taking the step of documenting the system, it then provides a good, strong foundation and basis for further ongoing improvement. As I mentioned, ISO is just a starting point. The real key to long-term success is using this foundation to build continuous improvement ongoing forever.
And now the first phone call, a greeting to Guadalajara, Jalisco. This is coming from Veracruz. Good morning. I am calling from the University Univer. What practical recommendations do you have for us to implement ISO 9000 in an educational institution that is medium size?
Well, ISO 9000 primarily to this point has been used in manufacturing type businesses. It is just starting to be used by service organizations such as banking institutions, insurance companies, restaurants and hotels. I am not aware at this point in my own personal experience of this being used by educational institutions, but many of the ISO principles apply to educational institutions. You have customers, you have contracts with your customers, you design programs, you provide services, you have production processes. So the guidelines can be applied to educational institutions, can be applied to service industries, and are now just emerging to get a lot of interest in the service sectors.
From Mexico, now we are moving on to Paraguay, and this is coming from the Catholic University from Paraguay, Asunción, Paraguay. Buenos días. Paraguay is one of the countries that forms part of Mercosur, and its industrial development is completely at a disadvantage, particularly when you compare it with Brazil and Argentina, and we need to have an ongoing learning process in order to be able to compete. The country has an organization that is called the National Technology and Standardization Institute, which can certify give the ISO 9000 certification to Paraguayan enterprises. And what are your recommendations to for this organization? Do you think we should limit ourselves to the national organization for standardization, or do you think we could count on the support of the international standardization organizations?
Well, I am not familiar with your national organization. I would assume by what you described that they are affiliated and are registered to do certifications in Paraguay from your description. The key here is to be dealing with an agency, whether a national agency within Paraguay or whether it be a internationally recognized certifying agency that is recognized, that is credible. As ISO 9000 has grown, there are many people now in the certifying business, and I just caution companies or service industries embarking upon ISO certification to be very careful in the selection process. This is a long-term relationship when you select a certifying agency, so you want to be sure that you are dealing with someone that is going to be with you for the long term and is going to be someone that you are going to be comfortable with and is going to actually also be recognized by your customers. So just like when you're picking a very important supplier, picking a certifying agency should take that same kind of importance and analysis. It's a very important decision.
From Paraguay, we traveled back to Mexico, and we are now in Ciudad Victoria, Tamaulipas, where this phone call is coming from. Welcome.
Escuchamos, adelante, Ciudad Victoria. Parece que
the call. Hello, okay. We are calling from Cuautitlán. How can you register via one of these accreditation agencies in Mexico, and who controls this process?
Each nation that has adopted ISO 9000 as a national standard has a national registering body that registers companies doing business in that country. So what you need to do is make sure that these companies are recognized within your nation. These international companies I mentioned earlier in the program, such as TUV, Detnors Veritas, Lloyd's, they are all recognized in all the nations that have ISO as a national standard. So it's important to pick a certifying agency that has a well-known international representation and is recognized by all the various nations that have adopted ISO as a national standard.
From Mexico, we go to Panama, and now we have a call coming from the Technological University in Panama. Good morning. The question is, what are the steps to, I'm sorry, the interpreter can, how can we start a certification process of ISO 9000, and does this substitute the ethics in corporations? I must say that the interpreter is saying that the question was not coming through very clearly because of interferences with the monitors.
I'm not sure I caught the whole question. I think the question is, how do we start the implementation process? And if you're patient, in the second half of our program, I will go into some detail on my recommendations for implementation strategy. So that will be covered in the second half of the program. And if it isn't covered to your satisfaction, please call again.
Now we are going to continue with our question and answer session. We're going to Veracruz, Orizaba, where they are coming with a phone call as follows. Here's the question. From the Orizaba Technological Institute, we have two questions. First one is, what is the price of implementing a quality system, and how long should we expect results, in how long time? And the second question is, what is the effort involved in the establishment of ISO 9000 in a public sector as opposed to one in the private sector, or are there any differences at all? Thank you.
First of all, it is an almost impossible question to answer how much will it cost, because it is very dependent on where you are today in your development of a quality system. Every company and every either private or public institution is at a different level at the starting point. So one of the key things is where you are today. Those companies that are further along in the process of developing a quality system have a much easier time bringing their system up to the ISO 9000 standard. Those companies and institutions that really have nothing today, they have a much longer and costlier effort to achieve certification. In general, those companies that have not started and have nothing at all, typically the statistics are that it will take them a year to 18 months to implement the standard. Those companies further along, I have seen it done in 3 to 6 months.
And now we welcome the city of Cordoba, Argentina, South America. We would like to ask Mr. Zalatan to give us a little more details on the criteria that ISO 9000 have, if you do have them, if you have the aspect of the human projection, and we're talking about environment, respect for the environment, industrial safety, and if we can create awareness and in the formation and the training of the personnel.
Very good question, and also a very timely question. The ISO Technical Committee has now released a standard called ISO 14000, which deals with environmental and safety issues. This is over and above ISO 9000, and I believe a future program in this series is going to address this new environmental ISO standard. Also, I'd like to mention that Dr. Cardenas here at the International Training Center is working to develop a resource center that will make available all kinds of information on not only ISO standards, but on other relevant topics that have been covered in these programs that will be available to all of you. And this is something I am working with him on, and we are working to develop a very good resource center and literature, and that will be available to all of you.
Next question is coming by phone, and it's coming from Tabasco, Mexico, from Macuspana, and this is coming from Cemento Zapasco Company. Buenos días. We have two questions. The first one is, what relationship is there between the concepts of re-engineering and the concepts of ISO 9000? And the second question, what is the value of each one of these elements at the time of auditing for certification? Thank you.
Well, companies that are re-engineering their systems are really looking to streamline and improve the effectiveness of their businesses. There's a very close parallel to these re-engineering efforts and looking at a standard like ISO 9000. As I have mentioned, ISO 9000 puts together in a very good comprehensive form a good set of common sense principles that every business should be following. And any company working on re-engineering, it would be very smart for them to look at these principles and to help guide them in the re-engineering process and help them streamline their operations and make their businesses more efficient. These are good guidelines for business. Again, remember, they are only a starting point. They are not going to bring you to what I would call world-class status. They're going to give you the good firm foundation for further improvement.
We have another call coming in from Baja California, from the Autonomous University, Campo Guerrero, Mexico. Good morning. ISO 9000 is an organization mainly a Western organization, but the Oriental or the Eastern Bloc doesn't accept that, and they have their own systems, and it's basically robotized. So now they have a customer satisfaction, and they're talking about some. Which system do you think would be more applicable to the culture of the workers in Mexico? What do you think?
Well, first of all, I want to address your statement that this is not being accepted in the Pacific Rim. From my own experience, I can tell you that this is not what I have seen. In the Pacific Rim countries, such as Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, all of these nations now have accepted ISO as a national standard, and in fact, many companies in these countries are very aggressively putting this in their contract requirements. So, my experience is that. This has been accepted by the majority of the Pacific Rim countries, and any company in Mexico looking to develop a quality standard that's doing business in the Pacific Rim would be advised. It is my advice for you to pursue very aggressively the ISO 9000 standards as your model for your quality system.
Next call is coming from the Ibero-American University Campus León, Guanajuato, Mexico. Good morning. The implementation of ISO 9000 requires an improvement or put in more supervisor or quality specialists, and in that case, does this oppose the vision of re-engineering? Is that what it is? Thank you.
There is nothing in ISO 9000 that requires a company to add quality specialists, quality inspectors. What it does require is that you have a system to assure that you do verify the quality of the goods and services that you produce. Now, this can be done by the operators themselves if they're given the training and the tools to verify their own quality. When I work with companies, it is my approach not to add inspectors or additional quality specialists, but to assure that the operators and the areas that have functional responsibility control their own quality, not to rely upon quality specialists or inspectors to control quality, but have the ownership for quality in the functional organization and with the individuals that are actually producing the work. ISO does not require you to add inspectors, but it does require you to control the quality of your work. You can do this by training and making sure operators and functional areas feel the responsibility for their quality and for their output.
Good morning, Mexico, Baja California, Tecate. This is coming from the brewery. Question. Good morning. What can you recommend, Mr. Zalatan, when one of the suppliers of raw material doesn't really have a formal quality system? Is it okay just to review the product within the factory, or do you think we should also assess the supplier? Thank you.
Well, I can only share with you my opinion and my experience in that you want to be dealing with suppliers that feel the responsibility for quality and have systems in place so that you do not have to inspect their product when it reaches your facility. You want to be dealing with people that feel that ownership and responsibility for quality and have systems in place to assure quality before it leaves their facility, and that they feel this ownership at their site. So my recommendation to you, depending upon how critical this supplier is to you, that you assure that they have systems in place to control their quality and that they're not relying upon you to be the final inspector, but they should control the quality being delivered to you.
From Chihuahua, Mexico. Next call comes from the technology. Good morning. Our question is, how could we differentiate, what is the difference between ISO 9000 and ICASES? I'm sorry, the interpreter didn't really get the last part of the question.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Continue with our next question, and this question is coming via fax, coming from the University San Jose, Costa Rica. And the question is, how much will it cost and how long will it take to implement ISO 9000? We have a lot of questions here regarding cost.
I understand the interest in cost, and I can tell you from my personal experience, again, that this is not something that can be answered. I cannot give you a cost figure. It really depends upon where you are today. And those companies that already have a quality system in place, many times they will find it a very relatively easy process to bring their systems up to the ISO standard. Those companies, again, that I have mentioned that have very little in place today, for them it is a much bigger undertaking. So it really requires someone to go in and assess where you are, and in many cases this is where sometimes it is good to bring in an outside expert to come in and assist you and help you, to give you an estimate, to actually specifically look at your system and give you some guidance and coaching on what it will take to get you up to the ISO standard. This is what I do for many companies here in the United States, and it is a good idea. It helps companies to get a good picture on what it's going to take for them specifically to get their system up to the quality standard. It's much easier to give a cost estimate when you actually go in there and you actually see where the company is at.
And now we are going back to Panama, and the call is coming from the Technological University from Panama. Good morning. The question is, how can you cover completely, entirely, these ISO 9000 standards if in the world we still have monopolies?
I guess the way I would answer that is the type business, whether it be a monopoly, whether it be a government institution, whether it be a private business, to me that is not relevant. If you're embarking upon implementing a quality system to the ISO 9000 standard, it's very, very clear what needs to be done. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the first things you have to do is decide the upper management of the business, be it a monopoly or a private business or a government agency, needs to decide that this is something they want to do and that they are committed to it. Now, even if it's a monopoly and the upper management is committed to this and believing that this will help them become a better institution, then it can happen. But it takes that upper management dedication and commitment that this is something that is necessary and this is something that will improve the business. Without that upper management dedication and commitment, it cannot happen.
And now we are coming back to the Technological Institute in Chihuahua, Mexico, and they are going to repeat the question. Thank you. Buenos días. The question is, how could we differentiate when we talk about improvement of ISO 9000 and CAISI?
I didn't catch the last word.
¿Qué quiso decir con CAISI? CAISI.
CAISI. I really apologize. I don't understand the term, and I can't answer this because I don't understand what you're trying to